Sensei, my name is Neal McLeod, and this is my assignment for Methods in Elementary Visual Art. What my project is to get clay from the river and to make works with students. So in Cree Asiski Sipi Uti, clay from the river. The word for earth, aski, is very close to the word for clay, asiski. Sipi, river, and the river from which we'll be getting the clay is the Saskatchewan River, which is on the north part of my reserve, and it is called in Cree Kisaskatchewani Sipi. So when we work with clay, it is like bringing the sky to the earth. Asiski through hands, aski through fingers. When we recently worked with clay in our class, it made me think of working with the earth of a garden. Kistagan. Kistagan is garden and kisik is sky. So I think it's like bringing the sky to the earth. Working with asiski clay is like working with the aski in gardens. Asiski and aski bring the sky to the earth. Feel the earth through your hands, plants from the earth, like working with clay. In preparation for our work, I would get my students to keep a sketchbook, ideally a daily sketchbook, trying as a goal to make at least one drawing per day, so that they can start to become visually aware of the world around them. One of the aspects of life in my community is horses. While not everyone has horses, horses are a very important part of Cree culture, and I think it's something that a lot of the students could relate to. They could go to their Musom grandfather's place, their Ogama grandmother's place, and sketch the horses there, or even sketch some of the horses that they might have in their own yard. And of course they could sketch anything they wanted in addition to horses. Or they could maybe sketch one of their friends just being cool somewhere, maybe at a powwow or something. Now, one of the things I would do to start off with our project is I would go to the river, Sipi River, Saskatchewan Sipi, the Saskatchewan River. So I'd take them to the north part of our reserve, maybe with a keiteya, an elder, maybe some other community members that know the river well, and we could just look at the river and ideally try to scout out some places where there would be clay along the river. So as we were by the river, I would ask and follow protocol to get an elder to come and tell stories to the children, to the students. And I think Dapskuts Nipi, stories are like water. Dapskuts Sipi, like the river. And Dapskuts Kisaskatchewan Sipi, like the Saskatchewan River. So some of these stories I hope would help ground the students in the collection of the clay and get them to start thinking about what they want to make with the clay once they get it. Then I would get them to sit in a circle. Asiski is the word for clay. And wasagam mapiak, that means we'd sit in a circle and we'd talk about some of the ideas that we have of clay, talk about some of the stories that we heard from the elders, the people that took us to the river. There could be others, like hunters or trappers, people that gather medicines. We could sit in the circle and talk about some of those ideas and start to think about what we might make with the clay. Then we would go and get the clay. We get the clay in little pails and bring it back and get the clay ready for working with in our classroom, take it back to the school. And we would kind of work up the clay that we had gathered. Asaski clay. Nititse yanen. That means our hands become like clay. Aski painoa. Our hands become like earth. Then we'll place our clay pieces in the cupboard and let our work dry. As we did in our class, we'll wrap them lightly in paper towel or even very light fabric. The next day, we'll look at the pieces and wet them lightly in spots where cracks might appear. We'll continue this process until all the pieces are dried properly. So what we want to do now is we want to make a pit to fire the clay in. As kilns are very expensive, I think that there's two methods that I'm going to propose in this lesson as a way of kind of experimenting. So I wanted to describe what this would be called in Cree. So Gotawan is there's fire. Askigos, that means like a fire in the earth or a fire pit. So what we're going to do is we're going to dig a pit, a rectangular pit, about 4 feet to 4.5 feet wide, roughly 8 feet long, and 3 feet deep. Now after we experiment with this, we might end up making the pit deeper, but in some of the research that I've done, it seems to be like an appropriate length. One last thing to mention is while we're digging the pit, because this will take time and it will be hard work, and everyone will take turns doing it, including myself. Because I think it's important for a teacher to actively engage in the project, including the hard work. But while we're digging the pit, we'll, at nighttime and when we're not working on it, we'll cover it with a tarp, and we'll anchor the tarp down on the sides of the pit with stones that I could get from my place or even by the river. This is the second step of method 1. This is basically a step to create a fire guard. So what we'll want to do is we'll want to include two elements of this. Once we have the pit chiseled on the sides, and try to make sure that there's no tree roots or anything like that. If there is, we can burn them. But then we will do the first thing, which will put rocks around the perimeter, but only up to about 6 feet, because our fire will only be about 4 feet deep, so that gives an extra 2 feet. Then the second safeguard that we'll have at the same length, 6 feet and probably maybe 6 feet down on both sides, and then maybe about, I would say 8 feet around. That might be a bit excessive, but we'll burn the grass to prevent any grass fires from starting. So that will create a fire guard. Okay, the third step will be to construct a screen metal. This will basically be the floor, if you will, where we'll put the clay pieces that the students will make. And this is kind of the screen metal that you see sometimes in front of shops or in front of restaurants or stores. And then in addition to that, so we'll have about 3.5 feet wide, long, and then 3 feet in this direction. And what we'll do is we'll weld little pegs on each side, or little poles if you want to call them that, of about 1.5 feet in height. And that'll create a base, and underneath there, that's where we're going to build our fire. And then to support a structure later, we're going to weld 4 pieces kind of stake around the center area so that it'll support a structure in our next step. So this is step 4 of our first method for creating a fire pit. What we'll do in this one is we will construct a fire nest. That means putting kindling and wood, probably poplar wood, given where we live, which is very easy to get. And we'll create a structure to start a fire, but not to a height greater than 1.5 feet. And then we will place the screen over this structure. Step 5 is fairly simple. What we'll do is we will take 2 hoods of vehicles, Shouldn't be hard to find 2 hoods in someone's yard. If we had to go, we could go to a wrecker, but I think we could probably find 2 hoods hanging around somewhere. That'd be kind of fun to go round them up. And we will place them over the structure, and then there'll be kind of a roof or a lid to our pit. And we can, once we get going, we can manipulate that once the fire starts with pitchforks. And these welded pieces that are around the center there, I colored them orange, they'll support the hoods once they're in place. And then this, of course, is our fire nest, which will start. So first we'll place we'll place the pottery pieces on the screen metal sheet, so around here. Now, depending on how many students we have, we might have to do this process twice so that there's room for everyone. And then we'll want to start a fire, and because there's this extra room here, we can kind of come down into our pit, and we can manipulate it and work with the fire, and we can add wood to the fire as needed. Okay, so here's the second method I thought of making a fire pit. And this is that means like the fire from the sweat, how my dad used to make fires for the sweat that we used to have, sweat lodge. Some English speakers may know it as, or matutsan in Cree. So basically you have 2 pieces of welded metal, kind of circular, cylinder-like, but hollow in the middle. The reason why they're hollow is that it allows you to put a pitchfork inside there to manipulate them, to move them around once they're hot. Then you will place slabs of wood, kind of flat wood, to create a floor. And then you will place the pottery on the floor. And then you will place slabs of wood over to create a pyramid or a teepee-like structure. And then the last step will be to use a propane torch. Place a torch under the structure. You may want to rotate it around to all 4 sides, but sometimes even 2 or 3 sides, in my experience, is enough. And the fire should burn for 2 hours, and the slabs of wood then function in the same way that the hoods of the vehicles would in containing the fire. And the fire will be very, very hot. The fire in this construction can make rocks completely red hot, so it should fire the clay. And once the fire is done, the clay should be fired. So once we've done both methods, and once we've experimented with the clay, worked with the clay, sketched various things, heard stories from elders and other community members, we will that means we'll think about everything we've done. We will reflect on it, and we will try to discern what we could do differently, where we could make improvements, such as, is the place where we got the clay the best place that we could find, or could we try another location? Then I think what would be interesting is we could do a kind of guided inquiry project about a very focused project that they could do in clay, which is making cups. And we could get the students to research different cups, shapes, structures. And then what I think would be really cool is to invite all the people that we had help us, and to make a meal and give them the cups that we've created. And I think a further thing that we could do along those lines is that we could even take these cups to a farmer's market and sell them, or even try and sell them online, just to get students to think about how in the future they could earn some income from their arts. So this is my little project about clay from the river, from the Saskatchewan River. I hope it gives you some ideas, and I think it shows that you don't need a lot of money to make art, and you can do a lot of things to make art accessible and fun for our students. Ikse, that's all for now.